So next up,
Thank you.
we have Anna and Jordan Rathkopf, and I let you guys share your screen, and here we go.
Well, thank you for having us, Howard. The photography was absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
We love hiking, so it was incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we gotta go. You're gonna have to take us on one of your tours.
Yes.
Man,
Okay. You're delighted.
So we wanted to share with you our project. This is it starts with me. 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. We had a 2.5-year-old Jesse, our son, and it was very unexpected to be diagnosed in a youngish age of just 37. And we started to photograph each other and our life, what we did. Yeah, it was partially it was like a therapy, and partially it was just getting a perspective, getting ourselves out there. This whole series, we thought we are basically done, and then was it 2 years ago? My mom was diagnosed with cancer again, and with a stroke. So we realized that it's just one big project, and it's basically about a sandwich generation. Because when I was sick, my mom came from Czech Republic to help us. She lived with us for about a year, right? And she was with us all the time, taking care of me. And then it changed. I don't know if you see the full image without the bar. You have to move it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's on our end.
Oh, okay.
Amazing.
Yeah, we see it. So we started to we went again into our survival mode, and it just started to be a little bit different. I, as a diagnosed before, suddenly started to feel and document the experience from the person that needed help.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it was unusual to have two photographers in a relationship going through this, because I think oftentimes what you'll see is like the perspective of maybe the partner documenting their partner going through something, or maybe a child with their parent. I think what was kind of interesting to me working on this project with Ani was that she was coming at it with her own perspective as someone going through it, rather than just kind of this helpless person just sitting there.
Yeah.
Being documented as they're, dealing with a health, crisis. She had her own things she was going through, and it was, we weren't really looking at these images together until maybe a year or two after her diagnosis.
We were basically just putting the images and dumping them in the computer, and we didn't have the capacity of talking about it. What was interesting, it was that it opened up, once we went through it, with a step back, a little bit time passing, we started to open up to each other, and it was giving us opening full conversation about how we both felt, even though we were together all the time. I mean, Jordan was with me on every doctor's appointment, but we still felt that we were very lonely. So it felt like you can hold somebody's hand and be alone.
And at any point, were you directing him to take this photograph this way, or we should photograph this? How did that play out for both of you?
About a lot of photos that I took, I was reflecting what I saw around me, and at that time I was my body was very limited because I was in chemo and all the treatment, and I just felt like an observer of the life around me. And yes, sometimes I just felt like
this picture, for instance, like she was terrified about losing her hair, which was kind of interesting because Anna's never been particularly vain when it comes to hair or anything, but for some reason, that was really triggering for her. And so she decided she wanted to just kind of shave her hair. And have her mom do it. And I think what's kind of interesting in the project a little bit, at least for us, but I think can be kind of universal, is that, her mother and her were not, they were close and they love each other, but they had problems.
Yeah.
And something about when her mother had to come take care of Anna and help us, it healed a little bit of some of the issues that they had. But when later on, you'll see when her mother got sick and Anna had to switch and take care.
It was a little
It was a
difficult.
it was a different kind of situation in which kind of that closeness that they developed when Anna was sick. I think they actually became a little more distant when Anna's mother became sick. So like this kind of image, this tenderness with the mother and the daughter, I think you'll see later when we show some of the images later on, there's a different kind of vibe going on.
We also found, sorry.
No. I was wondering, like a moment like that, the mom is cutting your hair. I mean, can you shed, what that was for your mom? That has to be an incredibly painful moment.
Well, it's kind of, I wanted to say it's funny because my mom was always cutting my hair growing up. She's very handy. Yes, and she actually I used to wear very short hair as a teenager. I was like into Sinead O'Connor. So it wasn't so painful, but there were moments where I could see again, like through the photographs, because when you're in the scene, you just don't see it. But then through the photos, I noticed how difficult it was for her. And I can only imagine. I hope I will never have to go through something like that with what my mom did with me, because
that has to be sort of a flashback.
Yes,
right, for her, right?
Yes.
There's the teenage girl. There's my little
exactly.
There's my little angel, and now I'm doing it at 37.
Don't know if my mom ever called me her angel.
It's kind of interesting.
Okay.
Ani and her mom, they always have had a very interesting relationship in that, mother and daughter, but they were really kind of like friends. Anna's mother grew up in communist Czechoslovakia. She had a very tough life. She kind of was in an orphanage herself, or like a foster.
No, it wasn't. It was a boarding school.
A boarding school, but her parents didn't really live with her. And so she was a very independent-minded person. And she kind of raised her kids that way, where it was the kind of a relationship where like they were more friends in some ways than a traditional mother-daughter. So when she actually had to come take care of Anna, it was actually some of the most traditional like parenting her mother had to do in a very long time. And that was a little weird for them, I think, observing it. But like I said, you could see it actually brought them close in a way that they hadn't been as a mother-daughter in a very long time.
Yeah, maybe I felt at that time, I felt like it's my mom and not my friend. And I felt like finally she's there for me. Only, the selfish child inside of me felt that way.
And so, I think for me, as being part of the project with Anna and mom and everything, like what was interesting to me when we kind of recouped and we looked at images together was how much Anna was focusing on her body and her appearance. And that was something that I wasn't really aware of in the same way, meaning that a lot of the project for her was kind of about the pressures put on her as a woman to appear a certain way and to feel a certain way and to be a certain way.
And that's an underlying underlying feeling throughout the whole thing, even as we are approaching my mom. The body image of we as women also have, and it has nothing to do with per se a cancer, but I just feel it. I don't know. It's not one of these images, but as we were going through the images, there was one when I was in chemo. I looked very sick, but my first flash was, oh my God, I look so good. I'm so thin. And then I realized how bad that actually is, how warped the idea of your own body image is.
And even this image, so we took this, she was really down on this day. It was a really tough week for her. And maybe a day before she had a different job at that time. She worked in an office for a real government job. And they pulled her in, and the first thing they said to her is, "You look so beautiful, but your focus isn't very good." And this is while she's in chemo, and so that was kind of like, again, reinforcing this idea for her that like how she looked was so important. Like even
Yeah.
to her employers, like they were judging what she was going through to some degree on
How
the
I
fact that
look.
she had makeup on and that she wasn't just showing up like completely untended.
So when you guys come to that thought, that's a pretty intense thought that you're feeling this way because you're thin. I mean, like that revelation has got to stop you right in your tracks.
Yes, it did.
I mean,
Well,
as
Jordan
far as
gave me a look. He opened his mouth and he gave me a look. So I realized that, and as you sometimes when you say things, you're realizing what a nonsense you're saying. The problem is that I really felt it. I still look at the image and I'm thinking, not bad.
Well, she's also
Except-
she's on tamoxifen, which
Yeah.
is a drug.
No,
They give tamoxifen. It's a drug that kind of induces menopause.
yeah,
And so it makes you gain weight, actually. So I think she actually was looking at that image because she feels like, the tamoxifen is impacting her ability to stay slim and stay thin.
it's very interesting when you're thinking about it on that way, but it's also interesting to see how horrible I felt inside. Inside I felt, and I still struggle with that, I felt so betrayed by my own body. I felt like my body just gave up on me. And I was supposed to be there with my, like I had baby, kind of 3-year-old. And
yeah, that's sort of interesting how you have two different headsets. You think
yes,
this way, then you go this way, then you go this way, and each one of those thoughts are compelling and have deep meanings and deep repercussions, right? I mean, to find yourself thinking in places that are totally new.
yeah, I completely. You just, and that's what I love in photography. I love that it gives us that possibility of stepping out and seeing and feeling again. And that was one of the observing pictures that I took when I just saw Jordan and Jesse, and I saw so much love, and I so wanted to be part of it, and yet I felt so far away. And like after when we were talking, I had no idea how much Jordan was struggling with his feelings of masculinity and his feelings of he needs to be the rock. He cannot cry in front of me because I'm going through horrible things. And it was kind of sad. I think maybe if we were like crying together, him because he was so scared, but he couldn't get the feelings out. I don't know. I don't want to talk for you, but
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the other part of the project for us that's become very important and has emerged, which is that it creates conversations around, I think, anyone who's been in a situation where they've had to take care knows how hard that is for a lot of reasons. But I found for myself as a man, I was shocked how hard it was to find support for myself emotionally. I went to social workers at hospitals. I tried finding people I could talk to. I even have friends whose wives had breast cancer. Just no one wanted to talk about the fear of what they were going through. And like for me, unfortunately, I couldn't get away from it. Like I'm just always been kind of sensitive and willing to be vulnerable. And in this period of time, I don't know if I ever felt so alone. Because Anna's been my rock for 20 years and now she was out of commission, maybe potentially dying for all we knew. And I was really losing it.
Yeah.
and then this is that's one of the moments when I had with my mom when she was with us helping me. I always had this dislike to the images of the sick person being kissed on the head. I always felt it was strange. So, but I see on my mom's again, like how much it was influencing her as a mother to see her daughter sick and not well.
Yeah, and then, unfortunately, her mother, she was living with us, and she woke up one morning and she didn't feel like half of her body. And she was sure it was a pinched nerve because it's happened before. And like 3 days later, our son came to us and he's like, grandma's not moving well. And like that's when it kind of occurred to us, wow, maybe she really needs to go to the hospital. And we took her in, and it turned out she had a stroke. While she was there, they actually discovered she also had cancer. The cancer actually may have triggered the stroke.
Yeah,
Does she speak English?
no.
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 So that was another part.
Yes.
And then it started. Our relationship was changing. We were switching roles. Now my mom was completely dependent on me. She was. Sometimes I felt like I have another child. That's how it felt to have another child instead of mother that was here for me. I had to be there for her on every detail, and our relationship unfortunately started to deteriorate. Our issues that we had before came flaring up. So we were photographing.
Yeah, her mom did not take well to being taken care of.
And Anna, where are you now as far as your progression with your sickness when your mom has this stroke?
I'm 6 years out. I am in remission.
No, I'm saying at the moment that your mom gets the
Oh,
stroke.
yeah, that was I was like 4 years out.
4 years out. Okay.
Yes, I was 4 years out. So I was in remission. And it was I realized one thing that with the trauma, your time and the perception of time just warps. It's not linear anymore. It's not like 13, 14, 15, 16. The time is all over. Sometimes I felt like I'm the person laying down in the hospital. And sometimes I felt like I am the sick one. The memories just kept flashing back and forth.
Like this image, for instance, thought it was after her sickness.
And
Then we looked and it was like 2 years before something. It's like, but this is how we imagined her. And this is how, and that's kind of what's, I think, interesting with photography sometimes. And like and even with our own project, it's like they become this stamp and like this timestamp. And in a weird way, it can reframe how you actually remember things happening or your recollection in some ways of how things were. And so like even moments like this that we were so sure was like the recovery and her in her good mood, it wasn't, but that's how we remembered it. And it was interesting how sometimes photos, like, because this is shot in such a documentary way, and not everything we do is shot documentary, but this is shot very documentary. But it's interesting because it's not always, what does that mean, right? Like, it is still interpretation. It's still influenced by other factors.
But it feels like a proof of what happened is true and how we felt at that time. But again,
this was actually her soon after her recovery, as opposed to what we thought was her.
Yeah.
So you can see the stark difference between sometimes what you imagine and what is.
Yeah. And how long did your mom live with you?
At that 2 years.
Well, she lived with us on and off for about 6 because of Ani's treatment, went on.
Yeah.
So on and off for about 6. Because of COVID, she wasn't with us right when COVID started, and she was supposed to come, and then she couldn't because of COVID. So she was for maybe most of 2020 not with us, but she was supposed to be.
She came in August 2020, and then the August 2021 she got sick. And again, it was tough on our relationship, but I am actually very happy we were able to do this photo series because it did give me the breather and the feelings that I needed to get, the empathy. And just seeing what my mom went through is basically what I went through, and how hard it is to ask for help, how hard it is to be the helpless, and how hard it is to have your body limiting you.
And when you, Annie, when you say you needed that, Can you speak to that? Does that relate to you as a daughter and a mom? You know, what piece of that are you speaking about?
I think it speaks for me as a daughter because when my mom got sick and oral issues came like blowing up,
Mm.
our long-term issues, I was angry. I felt resentful. I was scared. I was really scared. But I felt like my capacity for full empathy was not there because I was so terrified that I might lose her, that I
Mm.
also lost that most important feeling of I just want you here. I was just covered in fear. And thanks to this, seeing the images and working with them, I started to feel that love and the empathy and realized that a lot of the anger was because of the fear.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how time, like, at the time this was so difficult for us, and now I'm looking back on it, it's just like, um, it's just amazing. Like, I see her mother in such a different way now too, looking like as time has passed. Because at the time she was being really difficult, to be quite honest with everyone. I mean, like she
A
was,
difficult patient.
Yes.
yes, she was not playing nice. Like she was angry at us all the time for helping her. She wanted to act like it wasn't happening. She wasn't limited. She wasn't, she was in some ways in denial. So, we were having to be bad cops. But in a different way, as we've looked at it later on in time, it's just unbelievable how much she's gone through and already in her life and what she just overcame. And like, it made us feel so much more empathy and love to look back at these things. We hadn't looked at the photos for about a year.
So do you think it had to do with her not wanting to be her not wanting to need anyone else's help based on
Yes.
her own
Yes.
upbringing and being dynamic and living in living in Czechoslovakia at that time? It had to be a hard life, and now I have to be taken care of. She wanted no part of that.
Definitely, it was that part, and it was again thanks to me being diagnosed before. It's that feeling of you hate being helpless
Mm.
as a person. You just don't like it. It's really hard to ask for help,
Yeah.
and it's
Especially if
really
you're
hard,
independent.
and it's really hard to open up and admit you're scared. And I know she was terrified. And I was terrified. I was terrified. She was scared for losing me. She was scared for losing her own life. But I was terrified too. I was terrified I will lose my mom.
Mm.
And fear is not the best emotion. And I am very happy that we have. I love photography as a medium. I love it because it gives me the possibility of seeing and feeling what other people can feel and see.
And how is she doing now?
She's in Czech and she's much better. She always has some issues still. She luckily, but we didn't know. We had to, again, you have to learn so much, right? So we didn't know that with stroke, if you are lucky enough and you get in hospital within 2 to 4 hour window, they can reverse it,
Yes,
no
that's
matter how difficult that is. But
Yeah.
then the doctors tell you, well, most of the strokes happen during the night, so you won't be able to do it anyway.
Mm.
But
Yeah, I mean, I think that we learned a lot through our two experiences with Anna and her mom. I think photographically, our approach was really about showing it in a very real way. It's not always easy to look at. But that was partly because we just felt like when she first got sick, just none of it felt relatable, what we were seeing online, or you would just find the most tragic, horrible story where someone dies and like, it's just so depressing. So it's like we wanted to find like something a little bit in the middle of those extremes of like the super depressing and the super fake, just kind of what it feels like to really be going through this. And I think what's interesting to us is that because of COVID, a lot more people now can relate to some of these issues.
Hmm.
because it's not specific to cancer or to strokes. Now, so many people have been impacted in so many ways by this that I think that there's more of an audience that is looking for stories that
Receptive as well.
kind of
Yeah.
find a balance between the tragic and the beautiful, because it's really not so clear cut. And sometimes a really tragically sad moment is also incredibly beautiful, and it's weird. It's just not so black and white sometimes.
Yeah, which is sort of interesting how, this complete story takes you mentally to different places that you normally wouldn't get to. And a lot of times in a whole lifetime, you don't get to these places where you've been taken mentally, based on the circumstances. So, was it automatic when each of you got sick that you would use your camera? It wasn't like a discussion. It was just, this is what we do. It's sort of like second nature. We're going to document this.
It was, I think it was a survival mode.
Mm.
Because we have the option of I think creativity as a one thing can help people. It's proven, right? It's helping people to get through like the hardest times. And we just happen to have the camera as a part of the creative process. And I think it was very much instinctive at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then we realized
It's just so unbelievable what you're going through. It's just I don't know. It's like and no one we knew could relate. Especially at our age, none of our friends had cancer. Most of them didn't even have kids. So it's like, it was just this kind of like scenario where it's like, it almost felt surreal. It was like, is this really happening? Like, is this what's going on? And so I think the camera in a great way gave some reality to what we were going through. Because like, I don't know, without that camera, if our family and friends would have really understood what that experience had been like for us. And then through sharing it, though, what we realized was how many people actually could relate. And that was what was kind of endearing to us and like made it feel kind of worth it beyond just our personal need to do it, was that we saw it actually really did help people.
and
I think Jamie said it right. It's a coping tool. It gives you a little bit of space, but you're also in it, as well.
and it's
and that's kind of like being a photographer for us. A lot of the time anyway, it's like you're kind of in the scene, but sometimes you're a little bit of an observer of it. So it's like there's a little bit of a voyeuristic kind of thing, I think, sometimes in photography too. And so it's weird though when you apply that to your own life.
Right.
When you become the voyeur. And then with her mother, like when we started doing it with her mother, that was a little bit different because we had to persuade her mother. She was definitely not wanting to see herself in that condition, and she was worried about it getting published, which it did.
But we have approval.
But we asked her before we started pitching it, and we showed her some of the stuff, and when she saw it, she understood why it could be helpful. And so she actually consented to having it being used, because I think she also understood, like she didn't realize until she got sick that a lot of people, when they have a stroke, they're exhausted all the time, and that can be a permanent condition. And like, I don't know, we didn't talk about that much, but in our photo series, you can see that her mother is exhausted. She's not sick. She's literally exhausted, because that's just a side effect sometimes of a stroke.
The brain trying to recuperate.
Is that you just have chronic exhaustion.
But again, going back to a woman's body and the image of your own body as a woman, it was very interesting because my mom had similar reaction on the photos that I showed her. And it was a photo where she said that her neck looks like a turtle. And it was interesting that we both picked something about our bodies. And in a really strange
Her favorite
way.
image is the one with the lipstick.
She loves the
Like
lipstick.
there's an image where she's putting a lipstick on, and she loves that image. Luckily, that was like the lead image when it got published. But like, so that image she was okay with, but there were some images that she was just like.
It's very interesting to see how we are as women are shaped by our culture around us.
Yes.
That always puts so much pressure on. You have to look pretty. You have to look young. You have to be sexy. You have to be an object. a beautiful object, and then when something bad happened to you, you don't know how to cope with that. So you're going back to the patterns that you're used to, and you're judging yourself again. So my mom loves the picture with the lipstick, and I love the picture where I am starving myself on chemo.
That's, so and speaking to that, when you started pitching it, right? How did that, I mean, what was your selling point? What was your, like, I've got something here that is really special. I mean, which has to be a difficult space, because you're talking about yourself and
Yeah.
your mom, your
With
mother.
my-
I don't know that at first, I'm not sure we thought it was like necessarily, we did portfolio reviews, and CNN was one of the portfolio reviewers.
Right.
And they were familiar with some of our other work, which was unrelated to this. And I don't know, we just showed it to them on a whim, just like, hey, we're working on a project we haven't shown yet. Would love to get some feedback as we develop it. And they were actually kind of on the spot interested. And then it took almost a year to get published, believe it or not. Like, they were interested, then it went completely cold.
Yeah.
And then
Was there something in the world going on that put this to the back?
Exactly. Yeah, well, war in Ukraine happened.
Okay, so it was that.
I don't know if it was, I
But
mean,
then
I don't know. Sometimes I find that sometimes, like, we've had that a lot where people have said yes to a story, it got greenlit, and then it never gets published. Like, we had a few last year like that. So I didn't know that, I didn't really expect this to get picked up when it did. And then I remembered that they had kind of been interested. So I just circled back with them. I was like, hey, Caregivers Month is this, is in November. This was like May or something. I was like, would you guys be interested in doing something on this for Caregivers Month? And that was kind of like the spark that reignited it, because
I
finally,
didn't even know there was a caregivers month.
yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of like that's just a little thing that we do often, is we
Yeah.
try to find the like little hooks. I used to work a lot in PR, so I know some of these tricks is that, basically all these outlets are really just looking for a well-timed story.
Right.
And
They need content themselves.
Yeah, they need content. If you can kind of help them think through a little bit how they could position your piece, that can go a long way.
Right.
But what everybody felt very attracted to was that feeling of the sandwich generation.
Yeah.
Because even the writer that was working with me and my mom, she was dealing with something similar with her mom.
Mm.
And as having younger kids and parents that are becoming more dependent, but they don't want to be dependent, which is completely understandable. But it's very difficult.
That caregiver space is really an intense place to find yourself, and being sick yourself is just, it's just impossible, right? I mean, to write that scenario. So where do you guys go from here with the story?
We are for our own story. We are working on a book. We have so many more images. We have writing.
Yeah, we were actually pretty far along on a book on our thing, and then her mom got
Yeah.
sick, and I was like, all right, close the shop down. We're going to be busy for a while dealing with stuff. So we actually stopped working on our project because her mom got sick, and then we're restarting now our own project. I don't think that this work per se, like when her mom got sick, I'm not imagining we're going to include that in this, but the good thing is we know who all the cast, so we can work on this really anytime we want.
Yeah, we don't have problems with the permission.
I think we are planning
You
to
have
go back
model releases, right?
Yeah, we're fine.
We are planning to go back to Czech Republic this summer, where we would like to take some new photos out there, because I think Czech Republic now is a really important, in some ways, part of the story, because it's where Ani's original home.
It's
It's her
also
mother's
when-
home.
We went there in the summer. I was in treatment, so it is important to me.
And then just otherwise, we're trying to do as much of our work related on these issues as we can, because really, I think when Ani got sick, it was just redefined our purpose and mission for kind of what we value in life, what we think is important, and the kinds of projects that we want to be working on. I just don't think that there's really for us anything more important than the love between people, the love between family, and just how people can pick each other up. And frankly, I would think that was the first thing we did with you, was like we were working on with volunteers in Brooklyn. Like, we're just inspired by people who give support to others in need. I think that that's something that is really needed and been in shorter supply in recent years. And I think that we need to make a comeback with empathy, compassion, and support.
You're 100% right. You guys know Nancy Borowick, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Right, like, she's got a great book. But you know what she does? She speaks. So Nancy's, just for people who don't know, Nancy, both of her parents got cancer, and they both died within a calendar year. And she did a book about that whole process. But what she does, she speaks to pharmaceutical companies, right? Where she's going there and telling them, thank you for all the research you do. Because so many of those workers never get out. They're in labs, they're in conference rooms, and they don't know that all this great work kept her parents alive longer, saved other people's lives. So she goes there as almost as an inspirational speaker to pharmaceutical companies. So that that could be something that of course you could see the application for you guys doing the same thing. Going maybe a little bit to the left or to the right, as far as giving back and saying thank you.
Would love to do more of that. We're supposed to go in September to Duke. We're going to give an exhibition and presentation on this project,
on the
mother stuff with her mother. But
and how come Duke?
They reached out.
They saw the CNN piece and they reached out.
Great.
They have like a specific caregiving division or something, and they really wanted to focus on that.
But
and just let me put my rep hat on for a second. Sure, you're getting paid.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, please.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how much you realize when you're sick, how much you need people around you, and how you cannot do anything by yourself. And it starts with obviously the doctors, but everybody around you, and how much people influence each other. So if you are not feeling well and somebody just smiles at you, or I don't know, tells you, I just read this book, starts talking about something, you realize how much can that pick you up and help you out, and how much we are actually depending on each other. It's sometimes scary when I see the people around you that I'm depending on them, but
no,
it's true. And I want that to be part of the whole story too.
Yeah, we just hope we can open some conversations up about really difficult stuff, but things I think most of us are going to be facing if we aren't already. And I think it's important to build community around that, because we all need that support.
No, you could not have put it into a better context than that. That is really, it's perfect. And if we all do a little bit, that's all it really takes, is just, like you said, Annie, if hi, good morning, how are you, means the world to somebody who's not feeling well. It really, it really matters. It really, really matters. So, you guys know you have a standing offer, and I want to be asked before you go to CNN, as this story progresses, because we'd love to have you back. It's a great story, and you guys are wonderful, wonderful presenters. So that is a standing offer. To come back. Once again, we would love to have you. But I'd like you guys to just close us out for the evening. But before that, if anyone else has any, you have to look in the chat room, guys. Everyone is loving your story and all of that. If anyone has any questions, just Jay, you can unmute everybody. And, if anyone has a question, just raise your hand, and, now would be the time. But, notwithstanding that, you guys have the finishing statement, and then we'll let Howard find a way to dovetail this all together.
Well, I mean, Frank, you're the best. I mean, thank you for what you do
Yeah,
for the
thank you.
community. For inviting people to speak about work in this way. It's just so beautiful. And thank you everyone for showing up. I mean, it's like a 7:30 to 8:30 here on the East Coast. And I know that this is maybe a little bit of a heavier
Topic for
topic
that.
for evening before we go to bed. So I appreciate everyone kind of being here and
So,
listening in.
We have a question. How did you get on CNN? Was it just you had the portfolio review, you showed them the work, and then they jumped on it?
I mean, we showed them the work. They were really interested. They then shared it with some producers who were also really interested. They asked us for a wider edit because I think we only showed them like 20 photos. So they wanted to see more. We sent them more. They were still really interested. And then it just kind of went cold. And then I forget what happened, but I think, I can't remember exactly what happened. I think they selected one of our images for a
Oh,
different,
yes, it was selected for a competition.
they were doing like a Mother's Day special.
Yeah.
And that's when we reached out and we're like, hey, I don't know if you remember, but we were talking about this project. Do you want to revisit it? Caregiving month is coming up in November. And that's when they were like, yes, let's.
It was about timing and persistence.
Yeah, definitely persistence.
Persistence is the word, yeah. Not
Okay.
like we are not as lucky as hiking 17 miles and
Yeah, it's not,
Right.
not that kind of persistence.
Not
Not
lucky.
that
Stop with the lucky.
yeah, we had our lucky
I think
day.
Howard's more persistent than us, but
Yes.
No, that's very true. Very, very true. So yeah, Howard, what do you got? Finish us off, Howard.
Well, a very touching story. I'm actually helping care for an aging mom who's 93, and I can tell you that the impact on my own life in terms of my ability to get out and travel and do the excursions into the wilderness is compromised by that. That there are both dignities and indignities tied up in caring for another human being. As a son, I never dreamed that I would see my mother unclothed, or to have to help her into a commode, or all of those things, and then the emotional piece of it. So it was a very touching, tender, honest presentation of your work, and I'm really thankful that you shared that, and I hope that people will pay attention to the story because there's a lot of lessons to be learned in that.
Thank you.
The parallel for me
Yes.
is that I think that we all need places to escape. And the camera in many ways is a focusing tool, both as a double entendre and as a literal fact. It works that way for me. It allows me to escape my own self, if you will, but at the same time, it allows me to immerse myself into an environment and sense it and be part of it on a level that is very different from someone who doesn't take the amount of time and focus that I do. So good on you for the work you're doing. Caregiving is a very, very difficult thing to do. Stay with it. The reward in life is worth every moment.
Yeah. So
Something else I think I can offer, can you hear me?
yes. Go on, Lawrence.
Yes.
Is that I come from a relatively large family. I'm the youngest of 2 million cousins or some ridiculous thing. So I've seen this too many times, and just not them, but not just family, but also, I wound up taking care of. Well, I don't mean to gross anybody out, but I'm proud I got to change both my parents' diapers. But I think that's something that happens when you're doing art at the same time as you're suffering. It takes the weight off. It brings it back together. I think anytime we're doing art, our brain is working in ways that it doesn't work at other times. It's actually when doing art or doing that. But I can relate to what I hope happened as a result of your producing these works during these cancer situations, is that it gave you that peace. And the same thing, Howard. I mean, just going out there, coming from New York. Hey, I'm born and raised in Manhattan. I haven't left yet. I celebrated my 71st last week. Nonetheless, I have to guess that there's something very mentally enriching from doing what you're doing. And thank you for showing it.
Thank you. Yeah, very true. I tell you, I have cousins who live in Brooklyn, and when I go, we approach the city the same way we do a canyon and photograph it from that perspective.
There you go. All right.
I do that every day.
But you have to tell me that you climbed the steps of the Empire State Building. You don't take.
I didn't, I took the elevator, but I did climb once to the top of the Statue of Liberty when they used to let you do that. I don't know if they let you do it now.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I was fortunate enough to be in New York when the sun sets on the torch of the Statue of
Oh,
Liberty.
wow.
And I was at the Red Bank Pier thinking that I'd be the only photographer there. And there must have been 50 people with lenses much bigger than mine. And it was a fabulous moment.
Wow. Okay. There you go.
I haven't walked to the top of the Empire State Building, but I've been in the room at the very top, the portal to the dirigible that was built into the top, which I believe is still there. It was as of 10, 20 years ago when I was there. Little tiny room. You wouldn't believe what they expected people to do to get off the dirigible. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank everyone once again for coming. Great stories, great inspirations. I really, you know, it feels like each presentation there's something that fills the heart and the soul with good spirit. So I thank you all, Howard, Jordan, Anna, and everyone, you know, with your questions and your comments and you know, in the chat room is just spectacular. Everyone has a standing invitation to come back. You know, we want you to come back, you tell us more about your stories. And we'll see you next time. You should know that in the middle of April, we'll be doing another solid week on the Ukrainian issue. You know, we have journalists there who will be showing us more and more work. So that's coming. But again, thank you very much. Also, I ask everyone, if you haven't, please subscribe to our YouTube page. If you get a minute, that would be great.